Alright, so in this first video, I'd like to tackle any confusion you may have about intuitive abilities versus psychic abilities. Because when we're talking about these two things, we're actually talking about the same thing. But often these vocabularies are used either interchangeably or to designate different types of abilities within the psychic realm. So it's really important to understand that actually what we're looking at is a spectrum of experiences. Starting at the beginning, we have undeveloped intuition. Wow, I really didn't write that very nicely. Sorry about that. And then in the middle, we have our developed intuition, somebody who knows how to follow their gut feelings, their intuitive abilities, but isn't necessarily what would be considered psychic. Somebody who is maybe empathic, but not necessarily aware of their empathic abilities, right? And then at the very other far end, we have psychic abilities, right? And so these are people who would consider themselves tarot readers, mediums, and medical intuitives, things of that nature, people who professionally use their psychic abilities. And the thing about it is that we're all born with an intuition. We're all born with an inner knowing. It's just that over our lifetime, we sort of pick up a lot of emotional baggage and cultural domestication that can have us sort of disconnect from that intuition or to kind of push it down. And so when we decide to reconnect with that, it becomes a process of understanding what those blocks are. And that's going to be unique for everybody. Of course, as we go through this course, we'll definitely talk more about some of the common blocks that we see. All right, so now that I have the 4 clairs actually written down for you, the one that I think that we're most familiar with is clairvoyance, right? The ability to see, and that's the ability that a lot of mediums tend to lean on is this inner sight, right, in the third eye space. Often this is interpreted through a personal symbol set, right? What if, for me, if we're both experiencing the same entity in a clairvoyant way, we might interpret that visual information differently. So it may appear to me as a fairy, it may appear to you as a gnome or a gremlin, right? And that's going to depend on our own personal experiences with different types of entities, as well as our own interpretation of energy. So that's clairvoyance. Claircognizance is an inner knowing. It's sort of that gut feeling that people follow. This is the one I think a lot of people are familiar with in their own life. We all have some experience of having had a gut feeling where it's like, ooh, this is just not safe, or this isn't right for me, and say a no thank you, right? And that's when our intuition is trying to protect us. But we have also, I'm sure we've all had that feeling of excitement as well too, when it's wow, this is a new pathway opening up in my life. That's a lot of time that is coming from our claircognizance, and that comes through as energetic downloads as well. It may, for example, if we enter into a situation and we haven't really interacted with anybody yet, say a party, right? When we come into the party, you can feel the atmosphere is really tense. You can see certain people not talking to each other, and it's I have this very energetic awareness of something happened here, right? And if you're really strong, you may be able to tap into that nervous, tense energy and receive a clairvoyant vision of what happened, right? So all of these senses sort of work together, and we can develop the ones that we connect more strongly with, as well as the ones that we're not very strongly connected to. And that's sort of up to how you like to receive information. There's no right or wrong way. For example, clairaudience, so the hearing of psychic information can be very jarring, right? Sometimes it's a loud thought that feels like it came from outside. And it can be very upsetting, especially if you're somebody who's struggled with your mental health before. It definitely can feel am I having a moment here? But usually what you'll notice is that it feels like it came from outside, and it is definitely not in your own mental voice. A lot of times I hear a man's voice, which is very jarring and upsetting, especially like when I'm going to sleep. Sometimes I hear people like trying to talk to me or knock or snap, and I have to tell them like, hey, mine's closed right now, like psychic ability is off, and so clairaudience is definitely interesting. And in my experience, I don't receive a lot of information that way. It's usually like a call to attention, a ringing in the ears, like, oh, I need to look, or like a name whisper, like, oh, I need to look over here, and like, oh, now I'm not gonna get creamed by this car that was coming behind me, and, oh, and then we have clairsentience, which is the tactile psychic feelings. So when you shake somebody's hand and you get this sense of calm, or as though you've known them your whole life, or if you go to ancient ruins and you get this feeling of familiarity, right? That can be your clairsentience letting you know that maybe in a past life you spent time there. And so I think a lot of people tend to, claircognizant and clairsentience can be conflated sometimes because they both have to do with sensations and feelings. The thing to remember is that claircognizance is a gut knowing. It's like, I just know that this is true, or not true, or not good for me, or whatever. But I just know. Whereas sentience is more about like that actual sensation and feeling that comes through the body. And so that's a big part of this as well, learning to receive the messages not only through these different pathways, but understanding that like our intuition speaks to us through our mind, through our body, through our heart, through our feelings. And so learning to recognize when it's information from the ego versus the intuition becomes really important. And the biggest thing I would say with that is ego and fear will try to keep us small. It will keep you in your comfort zone. It will keep you repeating the same cycles and mistakes. Whereas intuition sometimes can also feel scary, right? Following our intuition when we don't necessarily know where it's leading us, right? That's one of the things about intuition, is sometimes we have to sort of have faith that it's leading us in the right direction. Oh gosh, lost my train of thought. So ego keeps us in that small space, but intuition will keep us spiraling and expanding. It will want us to move out of our comfort zone, but not in a way that's like, pew, I'm out of my comfort zone and I'm like totally crazy out there, unsupported, don't know what I'm doing. I mean, sometimes that's what we need, right? And that can feel totally disorienting. But a lot of the times, it's just going to take us just a little bit outside our comfort zone, right? And so that we expand and we get comfortable there. And then we're going to go a little bit more outside that comfort zone, right? And further until we've become this sort of expansive consciousness. I hope this information was helpful and useful to you. Again, I'm going to put a lot of this into a PDF as well. I've just found that since people learn through different avenues, that it's helpful to have all sorts of resources available. Happy to receive any feedback that you have about this information. I know that my handwriting definitely could use some work.